Heavy on the Ravens to have the most regular season wins at plus 550, or light on the Texans to have the most regular season wins at 19-1.
So my answer is going to shock you.
You're going Texans, aren't you?
What if I told you I don't know if either team's making the playoffs this season?
Oh, okay, that I did not. Texans, I could buy into. Ravens, I need to know how this is going to go down.
So I'm worried about the Ravens this year.
Okay.
They're losing a lot. They're losing 3 key offensive linemen for them from last year's team. Defensively, they're losing guys at all 3 levels. They're losing guys on the defensive line. They're losing Patrick Queen, their linebacker. They're losing Geno Stone in the secondary. They just don't have as much depth. But we're not making a big enough deal about this Mike Macdonald loss. I've watched a lot of Ravens football, and they have had good defensive coordinators in the past. He is elite, Nick, to the point where I was in the camp with people who I would have fired John Harbaugh if it meant keeping Mike Macdonald as head coach.
Wow.
I think that highly of that guy. There was somebody out there who said that Mike Macdonald is defensive Sean McVay, and it is the perfect comparison. That's what he is. He's a young defensive genius. I think he's going to do great things in Seattle. But I'm worried about the Ravens, man. You know, Lamar, obviously, he has been hurt before, and the 3 full seasons he has been healthy, he's won MVP 2 of them. The problem is he's also had 2 seasons where he's been hurt for 6 or more games, and their schedule is going to be brutal. They play in the best division in football, and I just, look, I mean, certainly they could make the playoffs. Maybe they're like a 10, 11-win team and get in as a wild card team, but I think certainly it could be worth a bet for them to miss. And I think we're sleeping on the Colts as well. Obviously, there were a lot of great coaching jobs last year in the NFL. The job Stefanski did with all the Browns injuries and Flacco and getting to the playoffs. DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud, that was terrific. Dan Campbell and the Lions. Shane Steichen is terrific for Indianapolis. We don't talk about the fact how good their offense was with Gardner Minshew playing quarterback for them for a majority of their season. Anthony Richardson had some bright spots early on, and if they beat the Texans late in the season in that game, they go to the playoffs. And I'm not sold on Jacksonville. Tennessee's going to be one of the worst teams in football. And, I could see some regression from Houston coming. Their schedule is amongst one of the most difficult in the NFL. So the question, I think, is a good one, but I don't like either one, Nick. If I had to pick, it would probably be the Ravens, just because, again, 2 of the 3 seasons Lamar has been healthy. He has won MVP, and he has gotten the number 1 seed in the AFC. So we have seen him do it. As incredible as Stroud was last year, it was just 1 year. We got to see it again. So if I had to take it, I'd take the Ravens, but I'm down on both teams this year.
The thing with the Texans for me is that, listen, they were a massive surprise last year, but now comes the first place schedule. Now comes the tougher opponents. Now comes teams having a little more film on you. All of those things matter. And that's going to be factors that become a part of this season. Now, did they improve more this offseason? Yeah, absolutely, they did. And can C.J. Stroud maybe even be better than last season? Sure. We've watched quarterbacks win league MVP their second year as a starter, third year starter. I mean, it's not uncommon. So they could very well just have that big jump up, and we're looking at them as a 12-win team, and here we are. But there is a chance, if I had to pick one of those teams and go the opposite way, right? I'm with you on Ravens in terms of rather bet them. I would go heavy on them for most wins. It's more logical, makes more sense. We know a little bit more about that team, even though, sure, they're a little bit different defensively. The one thing I do know with the Ravens, they reloaded in the draft, and they reload every year in the draft defensively, so there is that too.
Is when people think conference realignment, Isaac, they automatically just go straight to college football, and that's totally fair. But for college basketball, I mean, some of these schools going into certain conferences, like Texas, Oklahoma going to the SEC, but Arizona now joining the Big 12, right, to go along with Kansas and Houston and Baylor, teams that are probably all going to be top 2, top 3 seeds in the NCAA tournament. What do you make of the top of the Big 12 right now? I know you said you think Kansas could be preseason number 1. Of those 4 teams, I mean, as of right now, I know it's super early, but which team do you like the best?
I mean, because you also Iowa State returns a bunch.
Yeah.
Don't sleep on the Cyclones. They're going to be legit. Baylor's going to be right back there. Scott Drew staying in Waco instead of going to Lexington. Just kind of full circle conversation here. the Big 12, man, and Arizona getting back Caleb Love yesterday. We always talk about the Caleb Love experience, right? And so there is that, but Arizona's getting back the last ever Pac-12 player of the year in Caleb Love. They do obviously lose Umar Ballo to Indiana. Pella Larson's off to the draft. So there's a lot that Tommy Lloyd's going to have to replace in the desert, but Arizona should be right there. This conference, my dude, is stupid good, and I can't wait to see it. I just hope that they start playing some better non-conference schedules.
Was there a move that surprised you yesterday or over the last 2 months of a guy staying or maybe somebody going to the draft? Are there like a couple names that come to your mind?
The biggest one to me is, first off, just the fact that we had so many come back yesterday specifically and so few stay in. I thought the numbers would be more balanced, but there were really only 5 or so of the big names I was watching yesterday that stayed in. The biggest surprise move to me was Hunter Salas pulling out of the draft and coming back to Wake Forest. If I'm Steve Forbes last night, he's probably losing his mind, running around his kitchen doing a happy dance, knowing that he's getting his big time guard back. This Wake Forest has been transfer guard U the past 3 years. They are again, but they get back Hunter Salas. They obviously lose Andrew Carr. They're kind of power forward off to Kentucky, interestingly enough. But getting Hunter Salas back, he, along with RJ Davis and maybe a handful of other guys, are going to be in the mix for ACC preseason player of the year.
I mean, when it's all said and done, there still can be difference makers here, one way or the other. How do you just kind of see the top 3 shaking out? And is there somebody that you look at and say, you know, this guy actually has a higher ceiling than people are giving him credit for right now? Because I feel like overall, everybody's just kind of trashing this draft class overall.
Which I don't understand either, because yes, there's not a Victor Wembanyama. There's not necessarily a Paolo Banchero where he's going to be an all-star in his second season. There's not a guy like Anthony Edwards, but there's some really good players in this draft class. And it starts at the really top with Alex Sarr and Zachary Risachet. I think that those 2 guys are going to be players that are in this league for 10 plus years. I think that they're going to be very sustainable starters, and they each have all-star qualities to their game. Yes, they still have a lot of development to do, but those are 2 foundational pieces for either the Hawks or the Wizards or whoever ends up with those picks if they wind up dealing them at some point. So I think that those 2 players are obviously going to go 1 and 2. It's interchangeable right now. Currently at clutch points, we have Alex Sarr being the first pick. He seems to be the guy that many executives around the league have pinpointed for the Hawks. But the Hawks have been going overseas. They've been taking their notes to get info on guys all throughout this draft board. So who really knows at this point? There's going to be a little bit more clarity on that over the next few weeks. As for the 3rd pick in the draft, that's kind of where things are going to start for me. The Houston Rockets are going to be aggressive in their pursuit to add talent this offseason. They want to leverage guys, if they can, to find an immediate upgrade. And Alperen Sengun emerged as an all-star type quality center for them this past season. They're going to want to get guys around him. They're going to want to get guys around Fred VanVleet. If they don't move Jalen Green, he's another foundational piece for them. So they definitely have the talent. They have a coach with experience in Ime Udoka. And I think that the Rockets could potentially find value with that 3rd pick in terms of trading it to a team that either looks to move up